All right, everyone. It is Monday. We're going to kick it off with the one and only Cody Davis. So, morning, man.
Hey, it's good to
Yeah,
see you.
yeah, good seeing you. Quickly, how was your weekend?
It's good. I was on the west side. I'm got an appraisal done at one of my properties. It's not one of the usual properties. It's a small residential house with two ADUs on acreage over in
Hey,
Union.
we're going to kick it off with the.
And so I'm working on doing the refinance there to buy out the partners. And the thought is that would be a fun vacation spot for the family and future family anyway. Have friends over down the road.
Very cool. So, someone like you, though, is there really a difference between the week and the weekends?
No,
No.
no, not at all. I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't look forward to Friday or Saturday because I have problems happen on the weekends too. I had a flood I had to figure out on a new construction deal that I own where they didn't install the clean out trap, on the back of the tub. It's not on the bottom, but it's on the back wall, just under the spout. Well, that's the overflow. And they didn't secure it all the way. And so at one of my new construction, I had water leaking from the ceiling because, of course, the bathroom's on the second floor. So problems don't care which day it is.
So that is good. I think that's what everyone likes to hear. Like people like you, way ahead in the game, they like to hear that problems do happen still yet. So it makes them feel a little at ease that it happens to everyone. But yeah, hopefully, are we gonna walk through a property or walk through a deal or anything today? Is that what the plan is?
That's the plan.
All right.
I'll have to figure out how to hit share. Oh, there it
Um,
is. Got it. And I'll just share entire screen.
yeah.
There we go. All right. So I'm going to share. Whoa, that's trippy. All right. So we're going to go. I'm going to show you off of the MLS. You can still see the screen, yeah?
Yep. I
Can you
think
see?
that's
Okay,
better. Yeah. Okay.
cool. So I'm going to show you on the MLS. However, I just want to point out that if you don't have access to the MLS, you can use apps like Crexy or you can use LoopNet, and you're still going to be able to see what I'm seeing on a commercial level. And I like looking at commercial multifamily. And the goal of today, from what you and I discussed, was to show a deal that I'm looking at, that I pulled the trigger on, and go into why and how someone else could take it down. So this deal, it's 20 apartments. They're all 2-bed, 1-bath, which is interesting for older property in Moses Lake because most of the older property are a mix of studios and 1-beds. Not a huge fan of the flat roof. However, it's on Division, which is a great location. You can see from these photos, they just did a whole bunch of new builds, townhomes. You've got new homes here, and then there's actually the lake across the street and one parcel over. So it's a unique opportunity. There's not a lot of mid-sized multifamily left to buy for myself and Moses, which is why I was really intrigued by this. The sticking point that I found that maybe someone else will be able to overcome is that right now it's bringing in 17,000 a month, and that's fine. But the seller's not willing to hold any form of a contract to alleviate the debt cost. They're also not willing to budge off of price any. And while they're marketing at a 7.8% cash on cash return if you paid cash, that's not factoring in any expenses. They took off $10,000, which is like 5% for vacancy. And that's how they showed their NOI. And that's, of course, not how a property runs. You're going to have taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance management. They listed some expenses over here. They just forgot to include it in their cap rate calculation. So this is like a 5% cap rate when you account for the actual expenses on the property. And that's the sticking point. The opportunity I see, though, on this one, why I really like it, other than just the location and being in Moses Lake next to all my other properties, the rents range from the 735 range all the way up to 900. I don't think it goes higher than 900. And for a 2-bed, 1-bath, 700 square foot unit, if you were to put washer dryer in these, they'd rent for $1,250. And so all of a sudden you take that rent roll from 17,000 to 25,000, and you got a $2.8 million building. But does someone want to pay this price and spend a bunch of money to get to go up 300 grand in value? The answer for me was no. And that's why I think it is just sitting here. But it is a cool building and a cool location in Moses, and it has opportunity for someone who wants to take it down. It's just not going to be at this price, or you're going to have to figure out how to get them to hold a contract. What do you think about all this, Mark?
So, so you came across this because I know from your journey, you kind of directly reach out to the owners previously, right? That was kind of your strategy. So this one, you still go to these sites also and are trying to find things, and then you reach out to the owners.
Well, I don't reach out to the owners if it's listed because I am a real estate agent and they hired a real estate agent. So if someone were to do this, they'd want to go chat with Blake here or Trino. But I wouldn't just reach out to the owner if it's listed because they hired a professional to be in the middle. They don't want to talk to me or to another owner. So that's really important to respect boundaries. The other piece about this is before this was listed, I actually did reach out to the owner. And they said, hey, we're prepping to list this. Please talk to my agent. So I was a little too late, which happens. But it's important to still do the reps. I mean, I first reached out to these guys, it was maybe a year ago. And I found them on Facebook Messenger. They had one of the apartments listed for rent for $900. And so I reached out. I was like, hey, I saw you're looking to rent this out. Is there any chance you'd be open to selling? And that's not my normal talk track. My normal talk track would be, I'd like to grab coffee with you, learn how you did it. But as your story evolves, I can't say, hey, how did you buy this 20 unit? I don't know how I'd ever do that when I own a 39 unit right down the street. So I was just asking if they'd be open to an offer.
Let's talk about that real quick. I know you mentioned normally you ask to sit down and have coffee and things like that. So where's that coming from, I guess?
Well, it depends what you want. I wanted to learn because the thing is, while my business can get really uncomfortable at times, I invest too much money into the buildings and then I'm out of money and then I have to scramble and figure it out. If I ever were to lose everything, would you want to have bought real estate because you asked for the sale? Or would you rather have experiences that people shared that you could use to rebuild? And so my thought is if I lost everything today, if all I knew how to do was ask for people to sell me stuff, I'd be like everyone else. If I met up with them over coffee or tea or whatever suits your fancy, if I meet up with them and learn about their story, I could take the best pieces of their story and avoid the worst. And in the process, I got a lot of great advice. I got some bad advice, but I got a lot of great advice. And I've taken that bit of information and started applying it. And if I had to start over, it would allow me to go a lot faster than had I just asked for the sale from the beginning.
I like that strategy. Yeah, I think definitely there's a lot to learn there, and it's not always like you're coming with like you want something, right? It's just you want to talk story, kind of learn how they got into the business, and get information, maybe at where they're at, right? Because you're trying to get to their level, possibly, right? So I think that's a very helpful information to give out to people. Now, so this one, I guess my biggest thing is always going to be. I think most people's concerns is like when you see a listing like this and you talked about the expenses already, like what from this type of information, is there any other red flags that you're looking for from here?
Well, I want to see if they show interior photos. When this first got listed, they didn't have any. So I was like, huh, that's a little bit suspect. The other thing to note is it managed by the owner or a professional company? And it's not super important, but it's good to know when it last sold because if it's managed by an owner and it was sold 20 years ago, there's going to be things that just aren't being done because they're like, oh, it doesn't matter. We keep the rents a little bit lower. And do you see anything here that's missing?
Uh,
It doesn't
miss
matter But it's little things that
Oh,
tell me this is mom and pop managed.
oh, I don't know. How would you determine that?
There's no baseboard.
Ah,
Little things. And there's a checklist with all the property managers I've met with, and like that's just it's always on the checklist. And that might be market specific, but the owner's running this and to the best that they can, and they've done a great job because they paid less than $500,000, I believe, for it. So they did a wonderful job way back when. But they little things like not even having baseboard in the unit, uh, they're letting the property be a little bit inferior to what it could be, but they also have a lot less vacancy because they're having lower rents and people just stay there forever, which is a great business model for some.
very interesting.
Just things that I've picked up on that are my market specific. A lot of the slumlords, when I've bought from people that have let their properties go down, little things like that are just missing.
So when you see something like that also, and let's say you did take on this project, is that something you would look to address initially, or you would kind of just for the
Oh,
baseboard?
I wouldn't go out of my way and inconvenience people because people are going to have their stuff in here, and I would do it on the turns. I would also get rid of the carpet. If it were me, there would be no carpet in any units for apartments, and I would try and find a way to build in a closet somewhere for washer dryer. And realistically, let's see if I can find the photo of the kitchen. No, it's this way. Sorry for going back and forth. I mean, it very well might just go here. If you have to put a washer dryer in the kitchen, it is what it is. The plumbing's in the wall already, and there's power, as we can see by that. That's interesting. So looks like they're running almost a conduit without conduit over for the stove. Who knows? But I would try and put washer dryer in, and as units turn over, I'd get rid of all the carpet. Carpet enables bugs to get away from you. I learned that when my cat got fleas in my rent-in apartment and it had carpet. And I didn't realize until I did, and it was a little later than I wish I did. Learning lessons, right?
I think something you also initially touched on was the flat roof.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that you would probably like you saying, where does that fall in for you, either taking on a project or not?
Um, it's not a deal breaker. I bought a lot of properties with flat roofs. I prefer pitched roofs, and I found a lot of lenders do as well. The big items that I found lenders like is it on sewer? Does it have a pitched roof? And what's the occupancy? Those are the big ones that I found lenders really like.
And from your experience, something like this size, um, how much would it cost to make it a pitched roof, or is that something that you would, I guess, is that
If it,
possible?
yeah, I imagine it would probably be on this 150 to $200,000. Yeah, probably in that range. I've done a flat to pitch roof conversion. I did it on two sixplexes, and it was like 120 something. And it was a smaller building for sure. It was only 6,000 total square feet, and that was single level. This is 14,000 square feet and double level. So maybe it's the equivalent square footage of like 7,000 footprint. So it's a little bigger than my 12 unit was as far as footprint goes.
Chester, Wealth Building Journeys here. He does have a question. I know you kind of touched on it, but he's saying, Cody, do you get rid of carpet in your units?
Oh, yeah. If it's an apartment, no carpet.
And then Hyder says, I battled fleas for my kitty too. We won. Let's see.
Yeah,
Flavio. Oh, go
I
ahead.
didn't win. It was right before I moved. So we just left. I gave this one
Ah,
a flea bath and then we ran away.
oh, what was the name of that? What was the name of the cat again? Because you had it in school, right? Or
Oh, this is Oreo. Yeah.
oh no. Flavio's asking, have you bought a Plex where you remodeled all the units before putting tenant in it?
No. No. And the reason I haven't is because one, the stuff I'm buying, it the lease up would take, if it was just a duplex, sure. But I still haven't done that. But on like a 39 unit or a 20 unit or 12 unit, the thing that happens if you do that is number one, you have zero income and all the expenses. And if you got the cash to do it, cool. But every month that goes by without income, you never have again. And so I'd rather have some of the income coming in to help support the stuff like the mortgage and the taxes and the insurance and the utilities, because you're going to have those things either way. And I have a buddy who did it on a nineplex, but then I view it as almost it's like new construction. The lease up can be really hard. You got to do a lot of concessions to get it full. Otherwise, you have empties for quite a while because you got a lot of stuff to fill up. And so I prefer to just keep the occupancy up and renovate as I need to. It gets a little bit annoying when you're on the last ones, but it's not the worst thing in the world.
So like you said, the sellers they weren't willing to negotiate currently. So now where would you go from there? Like how long would you be maybe waiting to reach out possibly to them, or what will be the next move for you on this one?
Well, I reach out every other week to the broker. I just give him a call, be like, "Hey, I'm still interested," because I am. I want to buy it. I've made 5 or 6 offers already. I offered 2 offers with seller financing, where they hold a contract, and I've made 3 cash out offers. Yeah, 3 or 4. And my cash out offer started at 1.8, which is what it's actually worth based on the net income it'll actually have. And then I went up to 1.9 million because I'm willing to stretch. I really want it. But if they came in and said, at 2 million, I'm not going to balk at 100 grand on this because when you have properties in a small town, you only get so many shots to own the small to mid-sized stuff. And so there's only so many of these, and I really want it, which is probably not a great strategy.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I know Zuber and I discussed a couple weeks ago about how I think he was looking to purchase those three brand new units in Vegas, and
Hmm.
he was putting together a package, and like I guess at some point for him it's almost like a not a game I would say, right, but like he's like, I got my numbers, I'm gonna try and get as much off, and it was almost like he lost the deal for like 5K in a sense, I guess, right? So at like what point, like you're saying, what are you gonna balk at, and what are for him, 5K probably doesn't make that much of a difference out of his pocket, right? So, and he would have got these three properties. So like you're saying, at 2 million, you'd probably still do it just because, like you said, these don't come along often. You do want it, but you do have your numbers that you kind of base things off.
Yeah, in long term, it's not going to matter. Uh, and that's a hard thing for people to fathom, but $100,000 on the price on a 20 unit, you do the math, right? I mean, it's 5 grand a unit, which is the same as what we're actually same number as Zubers, right? 5,000. But if 100 grand blows up your deal on an apartment building, you're probably too tight, or it's just a smaller deal. Because on the triplex, that'll of course blow up your deal.
Yeah, great point. Troy Roberts says pitch roofs, especially in markets that get substantial snow in the winter.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does snow here.
Oh, I see Linda's investing here. So um, go check out Lynn. She's doing a weekly podcast with her friend Violetta. So that one's pretty cool. So go check out their YouTube channels. But Lynn is asking Cody, do you still rent?
Yeah, I do. Where I live, I do not own. And we enjoy not having a whole bunch of outflows when stuff goes wrong, because stuff with property does go wrong. I have enough with my apartments. I like having a fixed payment where I live.
Yeah, Lynn was. We had her on the channel recently, and that was kind of the main topic: renting versus buying in today's market, and how a lot of she was thinking that a lot of social media influencers right now are pushing that. Wait, what did she say? I think she said she's seeing more people talking about renting is better, which I agree currently, especially in today's environment. And like you're talking about, right? Like there's people don't, I don't think people factor in all of the additional costs of home ownership, and they get into a home and they don't realize how much upkeep they need. And like I said, yeah, if you rent, I mean, it's pretty much just pay my rent and everything is on to the landlord now to take care of.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hey, Charles McCune says we've used salt to kill fleas. Is that something you ever use, Cody?
No, I don't ever want to think about it again. This one traumatized me.
All right. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So Hyder's saying he thinks, to be fair, he thinks it was 10K, but it's still a relatively tiny number. I believe he's talking about Zuber's three single family home deal, that brand new builds. But yes, but of course, for like Zuber, I mean, for 10K, it probably doesn't hurt his pocket at all in a sense, right? So, for him trying to squeeze every penny out of that deal, right? I mean, he may have lost a good deal, and like he said, he kind of regrets not just moving forward on it. Let's see. Hyder says buy where you won't rent and rent where you won't buy. Wait, buy. Oh, okay, that makes yeah, I can see that. Let's see. Let's see. I guess. Do you look at so when you're looking at these bigger units and properties, are you looking? Do you think maybe physical red flags are more of your concern, or like maybe operational type stuff?
Well, the operations are awesome. I mean, when you see stuff that's wrong in operations, that's just money. Like there was a property I bought in Afredo a while ago, and they had a laundry room. It was just closed because the owner didn't want to think about it, didn't want to deal with it. Well, okay, that's $100 off the rent for everybody because now they got to drive to a laundromat, and then on a 12 unit, 1,200 bucks a month, 14 grand a year. That adds quite a bit of value and quite a bit of cash flow on a decent sized asset. So I love looking for red flags in operations, like just it usually lazy stuff that equates to the most money. As far as physical condition, though, I mean, yeah, you got to check that out. But everything physically can be fixed with a check. The thing that's hard to fix is the tenant base. Like I had a, if you can drive up and you don't feel safe, that's hard to remediate. I did that with a turn from a 38 to a 39, and that project it took 4 years to get the tenant base to a place where it actually feels safe. It's not perfect, but back then your odds of getting shot were significantly higher than they are today at that property. And that's the hard part. So I would focus more on the making sure you don't get your situation like that, because that was tough. It just takes time and it takes money, and you got to do a lot of evictions and a lot of cop calls and a lot of facilitating of broken windows, busted out cars, theft. I mean, we've seen probably every crime you can see at that property. So I would watch out for that.
That property was probably in Grandview, Washington, where Flavio is. Nah. uh, what's the worst thing you've ever discovered during a walkthrough?
There's there's some that I won't share, but the one that I will share is there was a basement full of water, and the basement had maybe a foot of water. There were active leaks that were running over electrical panels, and there was a Christmas tree in the center of the room covered in human feces.
Damn. Uh, so okay. Well, just curious though, was it raining? Like that's why it was leaking? Like there's, or it was just something
Leaks in
in,
the pipes.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, wow. I don't know if I can top that.
That's not
uh,
even the worst one. That's just the worst one I can share.
yeah. All right. Hey, what's up, C Web? Just letting you know the Patriots got lucky last night. But let's see. Lynn says aside, wait, where'd I go? Aside from the numbers, is there anything with a property that you wouldn't touch? AKA flat roofs versus shingle, no sewage, only septic, or other structural problems.
No, I've thus far I've probably touched most of the big issues. But there's always going to be something that you don't know. So there's something out there that I don't know about as far as a building problem. But all the common ones, I feel like I've experienced. I've experienced foundation issues. I've had tenants drive their vehicles through my building multiple times. So that messed up a lot of the walls, exterior walls. I've had I had a roofer redo a flat roof, but they installed it wrong. I don't know how. They're licensed and bonded. This was one of my first contractors ever, and so they laid the material in the wrong order, and so everything leaked, and it caused the ceilings to cave in. Not the actual roof structure, but just the ceilings, and so that caved in. I've had over 80% of a building freeze, and because the pipes rolled, it froze and burst, and so water sprayed into. It was over 20 units on a 24-plex. That was pretty suck. Um, yeah, so I would just find an opportunity that is the best deal for you.
All right. If any, well, with your cat having fun today, C Web is here from Virginia. He actually does have a Instagram. He has a channel for his cat. I think it's called Bat Cat or something. But go check out C Web on Instagram. He also has a YouTube channel. I'll put that in the chat soon. But he says, Cody, I am curious if you have ever been to Clarkstown, Washington. If so, how does it compare to other areas of Washington?
I looked at buying over there. There was like a 11 unit, and then there was, I think that's over by Lewiston, I believe, unless I'm just getting it completely wrong. Uh, if it's where I think it is, I was looking at buying there. I need another market because there's not a whole lot left to do here in Moses. So
Uh,
I'm looking around.
C Web does say, yeah, so it's Batcat US on Instagram. He says, yes, his cat was a stray in Tallahassee. Um, hey, morning, Josh Burdick. Yeah, well, Chester says that it's truly sad that people live like that. Hyder says licensed and bonded has zero bearing on work quality, zero correlation at all.
Yeah, learned that lesson the hard way.
Is there a point where, I mean, how much due diligence do you do before you kind of move forward if you are going to take on a contract? Is it kind of a too much due diligence can be too much for you, I guess, in a sense?
Well, I'm not taking on new contractors at this point. I'm not open to it. Unless I expand into a new market, I will have to. But I want to see what projects they've done, what size of projects they've managed, and how they manage the budget. Because people that say they always hit their budget, I either haven't done a lot or they're lying. Things pop up. It's just a reality. And so I want to see if they're going to lie to me on that and like what capacity they have to handle the problems that do pop up because they will.
Let's see. Hmm. Okay. Ever bought a property despite red flags that turned out fine, I guess, in a sense?
Yeah. The When I bought my first property in my partnership with Christian, everything was wrong with it. Everything. I mean, it had every red flag you could have. Almost nobody was paying. The roof leaked. Windows were broken. Doors were kicked in. The floors were buckled. And it was crazy. Water heaters all need replaced. Panels needed replaced. And it worked out okay. We had to spend a bunch of money, but you can't just say, "Oh, it's going to be all right." Like, you have to have a plan for it. But most things go okay, and you got to make sure the numbers cash flow. If you buy an alligator, like Zuber might say, then you're probably not going to stay in business super long.
Do you think, like, for people that are a little bit newer or getting started, I know those seem kind of daunting, those type of properties possibly, but do you think those are kind of the ones that people may have to get into because that's the kind of opportunities that are out there for them in a sense, right? Where they're not going to get the great deals because they're not really established or they don't have as many levers to pull for. Because like for you, for where you're at now, would you still take on that property that you mentioned that your first home with Christian?
I'm looking for the next one of those. It's a lot of work, but the bigger the problem you fix, as long as you're not just deliberately overpaying ridiculous amounts, right, to get in, the bigger problem you fix, the bigger payday you get. And so I've just about doubled the property value on appraisal. Bought it for 2 million, even though it was probably only worth 1 million. Now it's worth 3.9. Took it farther than I thought I would. Thought I was going to get to be worth closer to 3 million, but I also spent more money than I thought I would. So there is that. But those opportunities on a smaller scale are wonderful. You don't have to do that size. You could do a sixplex, but you get your first rental, whatever you feel comfortable with. If you only feel comfortable with a rental house or a 20 unit, because I've seen this before, like a 20-unit storage facility, you can buy those super cheap because they don't make a lot of money, right? And so whatever you feel comfortable with, that's where you start. And it would be better to start with a duplex that you feel comfortable with than to start with a 20 unit if you're like, oh, I'm a 90% chance I'm going to fail.
Josh Burdick says, if you explore the Spokane market, beware of downtown due to the homeless problem. Look at the surrounding areas and outskirts.
Thank you. Yeah, Spoke Compton.
Yeah, yes, Chester and they're agreeing that when you hear I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Ronald Reagan, yes. Let's see what other question we got here. Let's see. Ah, do you look at, so I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit, but when do red flags become leverage versus a reason to walk away?
Well, the decision of if you're going to lever it or not or walk away is if you want it still. Because if you don't want something, even if they give it to you for free, the question would be why. So it comes down to if you want it. That 20 unit, I wouldn't pursue them and try and lever the low income, which is a deficiency of how they're running it, unless I really wanted it. Because if I didn't want it, what's the point? What's the point of it all? So if you want to move forward, find a way to make it happen, and that's going to be levering the pieces in front of you. If you're like, I don't really feel like taking this on, I don't want to deal with the foundation, or I don't want to deal with flipping the tenant base, it's going to be a lot of headache. Then don't, just walk.
Do you ever see, what about unpermitted build outs or modifications on properties? Is that like something of a big headache for you to take on if you're looking at a property?
It depends on the location. Like in Seattle, that would be a big problem. But there's a lot of smaller markets where, as long as it's structurally fine, I'm okay. Because the city's not going to care.
Chris Webb is asking, Cody, have you ever seen finance evaluations like capital asset pricing model, and do they ever apply to real estate outside of of confirming the metrics like DSCR or IRR?
Mm, no, I don't. I don't know what capital asset pricing model is.
Yeah. Maybe, Chris, if you're still there, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that. Have you received finance?
I try and keep stuff really simple. I mean, everybody's got a cool way to sell you on something, but the bottom line is if your cap rate's higher than your factor rate and it's stabilized, you have positive leverage. And that's how I look at my real estate.
I think that's why a lot of people follow you and relate to you also. Like you don't make it very complicated. Like you're saying, you try to keep it as simple as possible. You kind of, it's very meat and potatoes with you, right? So I think that's why a lot of people like following your content. And I think that the transparency that you put out there, you're not talking about all this glamorous stuff and all these, that nothing wrong happens and all these wins. You're actually showing a lot of the struggles and the losses in a sense. I think that's why a lot of people do enjoy your content. Um, Conforming probably meant, wait, Chester saying, whereas cap is likely non-conforming. All right, you guys are met. My head is spinning right now. Um, but
And I don't see the questions unless you post them on the screen.
oh,
So,
okay, you're not okay. Yeah, he's trying to clarify. He's trying to clarify. I think what Chris is
oh,
conforming probably meant, and then whereas CAPM is likely non-conforming. Okay.
oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah. um. Oh, here's a great question. Wait, where'd it go? Sorry. From Ivan. Hey, morning. Ivan says, Cody, you being very young. What's your number or multiplier for phi?
Hmm. If I was feeling really good about my existence, because for context, like on a personal level, I live on about 2,000 a month. That's my monthly outflow. So I mean, even if you multiply it by 5, that's 10,000 a month, and my portfolio can already produce that. The problem is, even with 20 grand a month in free cash flow, the type of buildings I have make that a difficult question to answer. On a personal level, good. However, one shower cost last week. I did 2 showers. It was $9,000, 4,500 per. I had to redo the plumbing in the wall, the valves, the demo, and then replace it. And so even with if let's say there's 15 to 20 a month in free cash flow just across the portfolio, depending on a given month, how many showers does it take to wipe that out? On a low month, it's 3. On a and granted, you're not going to have that many showers, hopefully, but just as an example, I had 2 last week, and so $9,000 out of the cash flow makes it hard to be financially independent. It There's enough cash flow to live off of, but the exposure level is high enough the way I built my portfolio where it's not truly financial independence. It's still a juggling act on occasions. I looked at my account today because it's Monday and it's like, huh, I have less than I wanted to. And so the story of my life, uh, where I will be really financially free. And again, it's probably that 10 grand a month. Past that, because my lifestyle will increase as I move to the west side. But it'll only really feel that way when I transition out of old stuff into new stuff. That's my way of really owning the freedom.
Like I said, I think you being such a at your age, at a young age, and you have a you have great head on your shoulders, and you're a great example. I mean, I think So let me put it this way: if you were, let's say, my age, 49, with where kind of you're at in your portfolio, in a sense, do you think that would be enough for you, in a sense? Like it would be more
Oh,
focusing.
it is enough. Yeah. I mean, what I have is enough. And that's why I spent the last 2 years selling out of my partnerships. I went from 230 rentals down to 100. I'm around 110 or somewhere in there. It's more than enough. But if it's not simple, it's not repeatable or scalable. I mean, you can scale madness, but it's all going to fall apart. And there's people doing that right now on the internet, and you're going to see them fall apart. So I'm trying to simplify, get into newer stuff. And if I was 49 or 29, which I will be in 4 years, I I would do the same thing. I'm going to try and transition from the old value adds, make the money, pull the money out with a 1031 exchange, put it into new stuff with lower returns but stable returns, because risk adjusted returns are the best returns.
So Ivan does say, yeah, thank you for all your transparency and all the information you guys put out. So yeah, like I said, I think that's why a lot of people like following you and like your content is you're very transparent in what you put out there. Josh does have a question. He does say, how are you looking to fund the potential multi you were talking about?
Sure, that 20 unit. So if I were to buy it for a million, or let's even put it at the $2 million mark. I offer 1,800,000 and I offer 1,900,000 cash out. If I were to take it down at 2 million, the bank is gonna likely finance, even though it's not really gonna debt cover a whole lot, because if you're at 7% interest, 30-year AM, which you can get a little lower right now, but on a 1,500,000 loan, that's going to be about $120,000 a year. And the rate factor for a 7% loan on a 30-year AM is about 8% with the principal and interest. So I just took 8% times 1,500,000. It should be about 10 grand a month. Well, the NOI is like 125 grand. So the bank's not going to qualify based off of that. They're going to have to go off the pro forma a little bit. So I take it to the bank, be like, hey, debt covers 1-to-1 right now. And then I have 1,500,000 of the money lined up. Now I have to figure out $500,000. And so that would either be borrowing against what I currently have, or more realistically taking on a partner or two to figure out the capital down with a fixed buyout. I love doing everything myself, but the other thing about business is nothing is set in stone forever. So if there's someone and a partner right now, if I have a negotiated buyout later, whether it's they take payments and seller finance their ownership when I get the cash flow up, which I've done, or I write them a big check if I have the money, I've also done that. I can get into the deal for nothing down today, do what I know how to do, operate the building. But the order of operations is you find an opportunity and you can take it from X to Y. You can take it from non-performing to performing, or performing to performing better. And then you line up the debt, because debt's going to be the biggest piece. And so if I can get 1,500,000 from a bank, the way I think about it is the 500,000 from a partner is a lot easier. Whereas if I was just going to a partner and say, hey, I want $500,000, they're like, for what? Like, for this deal. And they're like, okay, what's the cash flow? Well, I don't know. I don't know what the debt is. That doesn't look good, and it's going to be harder to put it together.
Like I said, most people here probably do already follow Cody, so go. But if not, if you're someone new tuning in, there is Cody's YouTube channel, so go please follow and subscribe there. And Bitcoin has been pumping, so if you guys want to know more Bitcoin information, there is Nick's Lead Pray Hodl channel. He's also a regular on Zuber's channel, so go check him out. But Chester has Wealth Building Journey has a question for you. Says, I am assuming so, but would reserves be one, asset dependent, and two, market dependent?
I haven't bought enough markets to know if I need more reserves from one or another. But as far as asset dependent, yeah. And do I have enough reserves for all of my assets? No. Working on it. On my 39 unit, I would like to have 50 grand in reserves. I don't have that. So I'm working on it.
See, that's what I like to hear. I think that's the type of information that really relates to people where you know the importance of reserves. Yes, you're trying to build up a certain amount, but at the same time you're saying I don't have what maybe is the ideal amount, but you know how important it is, but you do have reserves but you're just not basing it on like if everything went wrong, I need this certain amount, right? But you do have reserves, and I think that's what a lot of people hear because they get caught up with a certain number, like I have to have this much per door, and I need all these reserves. But like you're saying, even you, as how successful you've been, you're saying, I don't have maybe this
No, I
much,
don't.
but
Well, and I'm playing catch up. To be fair, it's hard to own 10 units in your 20s, let alone 110, right? And so I borrowed so much money to get into it that I've been focused on paying back, and I've paid back majority of it. I'm on the last stretch, and it should all be knocked out next year. But when you're focused on paying down debt, you don't hold as much cash. You have a bare minimum, and then hopefully you don't go below that. I've done that before. But you try your best. And so I throw every extra dollar I can at paying down the debt, because once you're out, you're out. And that's not property debt, that's investor debt, like buying out partners on contracts and stuff like that. And once that's all gone, I think I'll feel a lot better. But nothing's going to be ideal if you're trying to scale like this.
yeah, and same. So Chris kind of reiterates that. So Mark and Cody, I agree. Cody does an excellent job explaining the finance of real estate. It is simple to review and easy to repeat in all of our markets. I rewatch his videos often. Harrison Trade Better 99 morning man. So he has a question. He said, "Do you think newer builds are lower quality than older buildings? Would you be spending more money maintaining a cardboard siding house in markets with more extreme weather?"
The bones of older buildings seem to be better than that of newer buildings. However, even if you have an inferior build quality, it's still nicer than an old property. So that's something to balance. Like I'm having issues with some of my new stuff, but the quality of tenant I have that takes care of the property, even though it's not built. I mean, things are built to a different standard now, but back then there was better materials, and so it lasts longer. So and it took more abuse. So I mean, uh, I'm trying to figure out the best way to answer that. If I could trade all of my old stuff for new stuff, I would. However, I would also not be opposed to having renovated older buildings because they will last.
I like that answer. Very good answer. Chester is saying, that brings up an interesting question. Is a reserve level more of a math formula or more of a gut feeling or more of an experiential sort of lesson learned wisdom or from the crowd? Hmm.
It's a lot of or.
Yeah.
That is from whatever makes you feel good. Because if you don't feel good, why are you doing it? Right? That's what it's all for. I have a duplex that has 5 times the reserves of my 39plex. So 39 has some money. The duplex has a lot of money. The duplex has reserves that make the partnership feel comfortable for what we're taking on. Do I wish I had more than 39? Yeah. However, I feel comfortable enough. Otherwise, I'd have more. So, I mean, I wouldn't have spent it on renovations. I would have kept more. So, whatever you feel comfortable with is ultimately what you're going to have to sleep with. I mean, you make your bed, you sleep in it. So, if you like living on the edge forever and ever and ever, then it's what you're going to experience. But if you don't feel good about it, even if math says you should only have 30 grand and you're like, well, I only feel good with $55,207, and that's the number you have.
Right as you mentioned that, J-Sick says, yeah, whatever lets you sleep at night. So quickly though, before we get into Chris's question, so like you said, you have certain amount for, whatever the 5 unit, I believe you said, and certain amount for the 29. So is that how you're looking at it? Like each property has their own, I know you have each property has their own reserves, or are you looking at stepping back saying, I have this much in total reserves, so that's why I'm comfortable, or I'm not comfortable or whatnot?
I like the properties to have reserves. If they should be self sufficient, they really should be. The problem is the properties all had reserves, And then I had a bajillion evictions at 3 to 4 grand a pop with lost income because I took on a bunch of projects all at once without partners. And they're all going to pay off eventually this year. They're starting to cash flow now, but I took on a lot of renovations, took on a lot of stabilizing of properties. I bought a 15 unit, no partners, that I had to evict a third of the tenant base. And that was brutal because I was almost 20 grand in evictions plus lost rents, plus all the damages that they did. And I knew that going in, but uh, those type of things that I did, bought a 6 unit, 8 unit, a five, that all drained the reserves lower. I probably should have gone a little slower or taken on a partner.
So to Chris's next point or question, I kind of agree with this, and I think I've talked about. I think you've talked about it too, but I think some of it also is your comfort level, but it's also knowing how to access cash, I guess, in a sense. Or if something did happen, it's also part of it is knowing how you're going to get money. And I think you've touched on it before, like credit cards, 0% interest credit cards, and things like that, right? So, but Chris says exactly, the reserve issue can be a huge stumbling block for new investors. If you have a W-2 and a credit card which you'll pay off, you can spread reserves if needed.
Well, it turns it from a world ender to a massive inconvenience on something like that. I had to do that when my sewer line had an issue, and so I threw in a 0% interest credit card. I didn't have the money. It happened a while ago. I didn't have the money. It is what it is. So turn it from a world ender to an inconvenience that I had to pay for. No interest, but still to pay for it. It was a means to finance something that I couldn't finance otherwise.
Yep, and then like you say, I think it's just being resourceful. Is it because there is ways out there to like you're saying, figure out a situation. It's just, and that's why it's great being around this community, right? Like you said, you use a credit card, and others may not have thought of that as a solution, right? Or even they thought that would be like a no, something they shouldn't do. But hearing someone like you're not saying you recommend that, but there's times when you just got to figure it out and to move forward, and that's what you chose to do at that time.
I,
Flavio. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, on that topic, I was watching the Iced Coffee Hour, Graham Stephan's show last night, the podcast they just released with Robert Kiyosaki. If you haven't seen that, that was a good one. But they asked the question, would you borrow money at 20%? He was asking Robert. And he said, well, I mean, it depends. And you have to do what you have to do. Like if you need it, you need it. And if that's your only avenue, it's your only avenue. But you have to be careful along the way that you don't get so wrapped up in I need it when you really just want it to the point where you are stuck and you lose.
Yeah, actually, that was to that point. Yes, that was a great episode. It's I can only listen to Kiyosaki so much nowadays. It's you got to kind of listen in segments. He gets very in his little rants and tangents, but definitely it was a good episode. But I actually preferred. I don't know if you watched it, but they were touching on like Kiyosaki mentioned. He actually liked the Sahil Bloom episode on the iced coffee, and
I
so I don't
haven't
know.
seen that one yet, but
Yeah. So if you haven't, I definitely that one's a very interesting one. Great discussion. So go check that one out. Flavio is asking, will you have a partner for 20 plus years?
hopefully my wife.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm wondering if he's asking in 20 years, will you still possibly doing partnerships or yeah, I'm not.
I don't know. I'm barely 20 years old. I mean, it's hard to say, but 20 years from now I'll be 45. So by then, my properties will have gone up probably 120, 130% in value. And if I want them to be, they'll be paid off. So if I did nothing else, didn't buy out any of the current partners, it'd probably be worth like 30, $35 million if I did nothing else uh, by then. So it's like, I don't see the need to partner unless I'm doing it for fun. just like Zuber does, right? I mean, not the partnership, but it's the art of the deal, trying to put it together, negotiating for the extra 5 grand or 10 grand.
Yeah, I mean, things can change in 20 years, but from what I see and know of you, I think definitely you'll still be enjoying it, and you like that side of it and creating things. So, but Josh, hey, Josh is here. He said he's loving this. Man, Josh is. I don't know. Did he even say hello this morning? He might be lurking in the shadows back there. But thanks for tuning in, man. Chester says, but wouldn't risk and therefore reserves be more spread out among more units than fewer units? At least logic would infer.
Logic would infer. Cardone would also infer. But the problem is, what do you own? Because if you own a 20 unit where the rent, and we got people in this community that are like this, you got a 20 unit and the rents are $500, 10 grand a month. Okay. I own properties where 5 units would bring in 10 grand a month. There's less to manage, less things to break, same amount of income. Some would say, well, if you have a hit on your income and one person moves out and doesn't pay, it's a $2,000 hit. However, if eviction's 3 grand or 2 grand in a cheaper market or whatever it is, your likelihood of having to evict the $500 tenant, I would say, is higher statistically than that of a $2,000 a month tenant. And if you have more units and higher risk per unit, the paper math looks wonderful. The real math is going to be very different. And also the maintenance headaches you're going to have on a $500 a month unit versus a $2,000 a month unit. So I would rather have in my portfolio, if I had 50 new units rather than the 110 I currently have, I would have less risk.
So Chester's second part to that says, so it'd make more sense to need not necessarily have higher reserves for the duplex than it would be for the 35 unit. Hmm.
No, it doesn't make sense. I wish it was swapped. It's just the partnership I'm in. I'm in a partnership, and we're going to be doing other projects in that, smaller projects. I wish it was swapped, the amount of money that I had in the accounts, because the duplex would be fine with the amount of reserves I have in the 39 unit. And the 39 unit would be ideal with the amount of money I have in the duplex LLC. But I can't just move the money. It's not all my money, and it's going to be used for other stuff. So yeah, you play the cards that you're dealt, and if you don't like it, you go play a different game.
All right, let's wrap things up pretty soon. We're going for about an hour. I think people enjoyed this. So if people don't know, Cody and I are going to be doing this on a regular basis, Mondays this time, live streaming, Q&As, maybe property walkthroughs. So bring your questions. But some people I see tuning in aren't in the school community, and I think maybe we can give them a little sense of some stuff that they might be missing. But I know you kind of touched, or one of your, I don't know if it was a post or question, but you're touching on about maybe your target rents now. When you're looking at properties, evaluate them, you're kind of like, I want this maybe area of rent instead of something based on like, cost of repair, replacing an appliance. So maybe you can kind of give these people that aren't in school what they're missing out there.
If I could start over, I would only buy properties that rented for more than 1,200 a unit. It's really enticing to buy the high unit count deals with lower rents, but at $1,200 a month, you have enough to service your debt. You got enough to typically service the maintenance and the capex. And if a fridge is $500 and you have a $700 rent or an $800 rent, your profit margin's gone. With 1,200, it sucks, but it's more of an inconvenience. So I would only target properties where I could get the rent to 1,200 or more. And that doesn't mean I'm going to sell all my properties that are less than that. There's a need for housing that's less than that. So I have a bunch of stuff that's down in the $800, $900, $1,000 range. But it is important for me and my next steps to focus on, okay, how do I get more of the $1,200 plus rent, which is why I like the 20 units, all 2 bed, 1 bath. It'll rent for $1,250.
All right. So those of you that aren't in school, that's the kind of information and thought-provoking questions that you're missing out there. So come check us out in school. Cody runs the Saturday Gen Z call. Yeah, I see Jen here tuning in. So morning, Jen. Flavio, maybe his last point or maybe what you can give a quick thought on this. He says, I think I'm doing wrong with singles. Tons of maintenance.
Yeah. Um, I don't like single families. I've bought a few. I I prefer multifamily, but if you want less maintenance, buy newer stuff. There's always a fix.
All
You're
right.
just
I
going to get a
like
lower return.
Yeah. All right, that was a great way to end it. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Like I said, me and Cody, we're doing this every Monday. I'll be back on Wednesday a little bit earlier to accommodate Justin Cambra. Is going to be on with me on Wednesday. He's going to kind of give a recap of his thoughts of attending the BP Con and kind of his takeaway on that. So tune in on Wednesday, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. If not, if you haven't, please subscribe to